wanted to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Brainflex here, back with another Eternal Return video. This video is going to be pretty different from my last few videos because I'll be talking about the stuff that's happening directly on screen instead of just rambling over it, so hopefully you guys enjoy the format. If not, just let me know and I'll stick to my usual thing. But I haven't really done a replay review in a long time, so I'm kind of nervous about it just because I haven't done casting in a while, much less casting while trying to retroactively think about what I did in a game that I played about an hour ago. And I say an hour ago because I just realized that the recording I did earlier didn't have the other, like, this screen on record, so I ended up just talking to myself on Audacity, which is kind of annoying. But anyways, I'll probably be swapping between my POV and the replay system just so you can see where I'm looking. Obviously, since Ava is such a long-range character, it's a lot more helpful to see where I'm actually directing my camera instead of where the replay is going, because I don't have the ability to smoothly pan my camera because Nimble Neuron refuses to make the replay system and spectating system more convenient to the player, which is kind of the middle mouse button being a slow drag. But anyways, first bit of action, the Laura hits me. I see she does a lot of damage despite only having one item, so I get out of dodge. I think she's pretty much done with her zone, which is why she's chasing me so much, so it's respectable to her to kind of get that early kill. Her team is a pretty mid-game focused team, so they want as many credits and mastery points as possible early on, so I kind of understand why she's chasing me down. Sorry about the video cut, nothing interesting happened in that area. I just had like a couple of hiccups and burps, so I decided to cut that out of the video. So I decided to group up with my Vanya after I get my full build in Temple here. The Laura chasing me through the entire zone didn't really matter because that was kind of the route I was taking anyways. Luckily, I got all my items in stream, or rather pawned, before I got chased down, so not really a big deal that I ended up getting soft griefed by the Laura there. I decided to teleport again to my Vanya and Warehouse because I'm not very comfortable with contesting Temple all alone, and I know that Vanya was fighting earlier on. So I decide if the Vanya just fought someone and neither of them went down, they're probably still there, so I'll make it a 2v1 just to surprise the other person, because I think usually people don't group like that this early, and that's why I make this like bacon and garlic sticks, because I understand I'm probably fighting in the next 10 seconds, so I might as well have some food instead of no food. So I jumped into the Vanya. I think we end up like kind of hat killing bears. I'll speed up a little bit here. And then I think I'll probably swap to my POV when there's no point in swapping to the POV when this fight starts because it's pretty clear cut. The Sua pops up, my Vanya aggro's bears, almost gets one shot. Thankfully Vanya has a massive shield on her passive for some awful reason, so she ends up surviving, like, really terrifyingly well. The Sua plants her face into the edge of the door, so we end up killing her for a good amount of free credits. So that's our first kill on the board, and we're feeling pretty good about ourselves. We just 2v1 the Sua, which a lot of people don't like. We got some credits, and we're like, okay, we're pretty strong. We're gonna go ahead and keep farming just to make sure that our mastery stays high, and we're gonna go ahead and fight for the Meteor. So as you can see, the Meteor is in police station, and this is kind of where our issues really start happening. So I think I said this at the beginning of the last recording, but I didn't say in this recording. I want to highlight this game because we have an awful early game and late game, or an awful early game and mid game rather. Like, it is so bad. We get pretty lucky, which is why we end up winning, but like, you'll see how poorly our like entire mid game went. My Vanya ended up being taken out by Rapier Skill by this Elena, which is pretty unfortunate. We're kind of doing well in this fight at least. We take out this Priya. I could have probably stuck around and killed the Elena, but I ended up kind of being a coward because I'm not sure what cooldowns the Bernice has. Although looking back at the replay, he has no mana, so I really could have killed the Elena, which is just on me. There's a lot happening in these fights, so I don't really, and I'm also kind of like trying to unrust Ava because I play her like once every 3 weeks because I'm like, I don't feel like putting too much effort in. I'm gonna play Ava. Back to the game though. So through Priya's corpse, I do see another team jumping in, so I'm like, oh, I'll just 180 and go fight them again, because worst comes to worst, I'll go down, my teammates will be alive, and I'll get a lot of mastery for it. There's still a lot of time before the battle zones close down. I'm pretty sure we're not getting this Meteor, although Ava is able to get Meteor a lot more easily. But we end up seeing this Bianca on the ground. Now, a huge mistake we make is not downing the Bianca, which I don't know if it's my fault or my teammates' fault for not going there, but because the Bianca doesn't go down, she ends up having a second life, and I think we end up losing our Vanya here because she face checks into them. Or maybe we don't lose it at all. Basically, it's just like a bad fight because we take so much damage, and then by the time we walk back up, another team's here, and then we have to fight the other team. Keep in mind, so far we fought 2 teams for this Meteor, and I think we fight the exact same 2 teams in the BZ later, so we end up kind of fooling around, and then I just ping, hey, let's go to school. I don't think it's worth getting this Meteor. Of course, it's now gone, so I'm just like, okay, free mastery, like, we're not getting any kills. Our team is not good for catching people and killing people. We really need them to engage into us, which is why I think this battle zone is a great idea. Now, the reason why this battle zone is very difficult for us and why we end up losing is because I make a pretty bad call. Me and the Vanya make pretty bad decisions on where to stand. I think the Priya is the only person who made a good decision, and I'll talk about that why that is when we end up getting set up. So you'll notice that the school battle zone is pretty large. The drones spawn in pretty late, but you'll notice there's one main drone that goes through like this corridor, and then another fake drone that spawns in the school itself. So the value of being at the fake zone is that it pauses your timer for a pretty long time, and it lets you be set up very well for a third party, which is what the Priya understands, but me and the Vanya don't. So me and the Vanya stand in possibly the worst place possible. This area has like 4 different entry points, and me and this Vanya aren't characters that can kite forever. We're very good at kiting, period, but we can't really get away from a full squad chasing us down. Vanya might be able to, but not against 2 teams, which is what the problem is. We're allowing 2 teams to hit us from both sides, so I end up flashing away, the Elena jumps out from nowhere and kills me, and my Priya and my Vanya try their best, but unfortunately, when it's a 3v2 and it's like a 3v2 and 3v1, there's not really much you can do. So we all go down, and you can see again that our lack of communication and ideas of how to play the game kind of cause us to split once again. My Vanya and Priya opt to go to Forest for the Mithril, while I personally go to Archery Range to farm some more minions, or farm some more animals rather, and get the call-ins in. Because I have a lot of credits, so do my teammates, so I don't really know why they want to go for Alpha, especially since we just died pretty horribly. And you can see that it goes pretty poorly because the other team spawns in and the team was already there. Obviously, it could have gone different if I was there, but looking at how the result went, we probably would have died. So, in retrospect, not a bad decision to go to Archery Range. Obviously, it was kind of a flip because there was a chance that the battle zone could have ended instantly, and then I get chased down and I die. But it was a risk I was willing to take just because I didn't think it was worth going to Alpha to potentially get wiped as a squad. So Penny Pincher comes in super clutch here. You'll see that I have essentially exactly 180 credits, if I can get this correctly in update. And that's really important because I end up not really having to order for a while, and you also see that I perfectly craft this glacial shoes right when I get jumped. Like, it's actually perfect timing. It like equips, and then out of nowhere, Bernice ult, Elena Reaper skills, and I'm like, oh, thank God I had Penny Pincher. Even more bad news for my Vanya because she spawns in, gets smacked, and then she dies too. So we'll go ahead and fast forward through a lot of this next part because it is a lot of farming. We are super far behind, so what you do when you're behind, you go for animals, preferably wolves and bears, and you go for boxes, preferably boxes that are uncontested. Obviously, you have to be pretty lucky to get a lot of these items, but it's just what you have to do. So if you're very far behind, you find yourself in a group and you're far behind, try and understand where the wolf spawns are and try and guess where the wolves might be up, and then try and get safe kiosk orders. We get pretty lucky here with the kiosk order because there was a team right here, but I think that team was also pretty weak because they just let us have it for free. So my team ends up catching back up in power level because we get these free items. And since we get these free items, we're not necessarily free, but since we get to spend for our items, we're now stronger, and that means we can probably take more fights later on. And I think I mentioned this briefly earlier, but my comp really wants to kite. So the fact that we're all stacking Scotties is pretty good just because that means we're all slowing ourselves, and even though we're overlapping slows a lot, that's still really important because that means we can kite for each other in case the other spells are down. So here's a risk that I think was well taken. There's a box that spawns in Hospital and Omega spawning in Stream. Me and my teammates understand that we had to do a pretty risky maneuver in order to get more powerful, so I ended up getting the box in Hospital, which was a 4 score, which ended up giving me Persona, which is very good. And my teammates are very lucky in the fact that nobody here was for Omega, which again is a risk that we actively chose to take, and since we took it, we get a lot stronger because the Persona and the Holy Order upgrades are so insane for mages. Like, it's like an additional 20% modifier. So we have a bit of a scuffle, nothing too committal though. So I think we end up going to Chapel. We just farmed through Hospital, and we decided to take the safe route. Again, since our comp is so kitey and we're so good with just like focusing a certain zone, we tend to want to walk places instead of teleport places, because if we teleport, that means we don't have zone control, and if we walk, we more likely have zone control. So like for example here, because we took the console, we see the other team walking in, which lets us prep for the fight, which is pretty important for me because I'm such a long range character. also the POV for this, but basically I'm trying to stand in a way that makes it as inconvenient as possible for them to jump me. Laura doesn't have a wall hop, Alex does, but he's super melee range, and Dylan has to commit her ult to do very far engages. So the fact that I'm hiding behind that wall to begin with not only surprises them, it makes them back off. So I got a ton of mastery there for free because I chose a good place to stand, and I understand what their characters can do and my character can't. So since again, I'm playing very keep away, like the moment I see them get near me, I just E backwards and I try and whack them, because I'm not trying to go for a commit. Like, these aren't plays that are meant to kill people, these are plays that are meant to get me more experience, because unlike many games, just hitting people gives you levels in this game, which is really important. So that's why I'm really focusing on this kind of like experience farming as opposed to actual like kill potential. Speaking of kill potential, we do see that this team is running up like a new team, and we did see the other team just earlier, so we know this is a third party potential, which is why I'm leading the charge and running as far as I can, because I'm trying to force this team to get collapsed in between us, which ends up kind of happening because we force them into this little hut. I don't know how the other team knows we force them in the hut there, but they end up finding out, and since this team's kind of just trapped in a barrel, they end up being shot until they go down. My Priya does kind of get a bit overzealous at some point and almost gets one shot, but a very nicely timed totem saves her life. Like, I'm actually really impressed by how fast she totems here and gets all of her abilities off, because we end up being able to cover for her. The other team comes in to clean house, and I don't think we get any kills. I think we might get one down here, but unfortunately in terms of RP we don't get that much. But what does happen here is that I see a pretty good, well, I get caught here first of all, so I blink backwards, God bless blink, and we'll know for adding it. You can see I'm panicking. I want to go into that corner, but I also realize we could be third partied. Fortunately, the Luke and the Laura step in a pretty bad place and they get third partied, so I snipe 2 kills with my ultimate, which is really the first few kills we've gotten all game besides the first one. So we have just tripled our kill count, which means we got a lot more RP, and I think that team ends up going out and escaping, which is kind of sucks because we don't get the full elim value, but just getting downs when we're this star for RP points after having such a bad early game is really nice. So my team decides to fight here, which I don't necessarily agree with because we have such an easy third-party avenue to the right of us, which ends up happening and also kind of saving us. But we decide, you know, it's probably worthwhile just because they're, like, once again, they're forced to push through us, and that's where our team performs very well. So we end up smacking them around. The Bianca gets a really good ultimate, so she heals a ton. The Priya gets a pretty good ultimate, but she ends up going down to the Dylan ult, and thankfully the other team pops up and saves our Priya's corpse because the other team has to respect it and back off. I think my Vanya notices it, but I'm thinking like, hey, if they're trying to all run into the same place, doesn't this mean that I can get a pretty good third party? So I end up running in there for that specific reason. I'm like, okay, there's a third party angle here, and I can get even more kills and make sure the lobby stays down. So I get this beautiful snapshot of Zelena going in, so I not only kill one person, I kill 2 people and get a full squad wipe, and I force these 3 people to not take their hard-earned rewards from these kills, which ends up giving me a VF blood in the end. I think my teammate something else as well. Unfortunately, we do get jumped by the Elena, which doesn't end up mattering too much because her team is god knows where, but since we managed to get these credits, we end up affording a lot more. So I'll update my credit count, once again, yeah, 468, although I might be on my POV replay at this point, so you might not need the double click on the replay side. But yeah, so I get a VF blood, super important. I get a Queen of Hearts because of it, and unlike League of Legends, Eternal Return still operates off of that like percent CDR instead of ability haste, which means that the more CDR you have, like every point of CDR you get is more valuable than the last because of how cooldown reduction works. So me going from 30 to 40% means I cast like 20% more abilities instead of 10% more abilities, if you didn't know like how the math worked, which is why so many mages love getting these 40% cap items. It's just very hard because you have to somehow get to them, if that makes sense. So we're in a pretty odd spot. If there's another team camping the cemetery opening, we're a little screwed, but once again, since we're mages that have pretty good vision checks, I'm not necessarily worried. Like, Ava is one of the best vision check characters, so we walk in, the bunny is like playing very slow, and then we end up getting pretty lucky because no one is there to block us in or block us into cemetery. And since we also know that the other team's here, I can't get caught here. Ends up being fine because I know my team's there, and the Bianca ends up not getting a full engage. We end up blasting the Bianca down. She has a pretty good stasis, and I back off the Bernice because I would rather him be CC'd longer than pop his sleep. And because of that, my team is able to collapse on him because he's in a pretty bad place. We take down Bernice, we take down Bianca at some point because she walks back onto my screen, and then the Elena is the last one down. We end up not choosing to chase that Elena down because we want the timer more than we want that kill. So Timer is a pretty important resource in the final zone because you can use it for so many options. You can use it to chase other enemies running to red. You can use it to rest in red so that you can get another HP reset, which the final team does a lot. It's a pretty, again, very important resource that you want to use because there's so many versatile things you can do with it. And you can also like go into zone early with more timer, which is what we end up doing, and which is why it's, again, very good that my team didn't choose to run into the Elena and burn like 30 seconds of the timer to just get one kill. So some tips for final zone is that if you have an excess of credits, you should really be building double Gs. These are traps that root for like 1.5 seconds, which is like the longest crowd control trap in the game. I recommend you always try and get at least some of these down if you're able to afford them. Obviously cameras and drones are very good, but nothing quite controls a final zone like traps. So you'll see that we're all ordering. I'll speed it up a little bit, like save 10 seconds, but we're all ordering. We're trying to make sure that we're set up for this final zone because, again, to reiterate once again, understanding how your team wants to operate is super important for these solo queue games. My team wants the kite. My team wants people to force to be fought into us. Traps make this so much harder for the enemy team because they also have a Vanya, who is very melee comparatively to Priya and Ava, and they have an Elena who is just straight up melee. Obviously, Elena can be a huge threat because if he jumps on us, we're crowd controlled for a very long time. So I want to make sure that those two are far away as much as possible, and I want to focus on killing the person that I know I almost direct counter, which is why I ended up trying to 1v1 the Adri. The Adri ends up blinking out, which is pretty smart by him. He's going to go ahead and rest to get her HP back. And then I'm going to try and get some damage on the Vanya for free, just because I know I'm safe back behind this pillar. So if you guys don't know, characters that don't have great wall hops are very soft countered by terrain, which is why I'm hugging this area so much, because I know that they can only really come from two directions, one that's covered by my camera and teammates, and the other one that I can see. So if I just stand around here, it makes it very hard for them to approach me. So I'm keeping a very close eye on the Adri because she is the only person that I'm actually genuinely threatened by if I position well. Vanya and Elena are always going to be very obvious when they ring at me, and I have the added protection of these double Gs to make sure that they can't really jump me that well. The Adri is going to go rest. The enemy Vanya has rested. You can see again the power of timer. While they are kind of in the back, they aren't taking as much damage as they need to be, and they're not being forced to take a bad fight because of that timer difference. So once again, you can see I'm playing very slowly. I want to make sure this Vanya doesn't get a good engage on me because I'm pretty much the win condition of our team. Essentially, me and this Adri are the most important players on both sides, so our HP status and how we play are probably the most important. Like, the Vanya is going to try and keep jumping me because she knows I'm most important, and this Adri unfortunately doesn't realize I have a double G right there, so she ends up being taken down. And so with that, the rest of the fight's pretty clear cut. Vanya is very bad into long range mages, and the Elena just can't catch up to me, so we end up winning the game. So hopefully this video was kind of helpful if you want to learn how to play from behind and just the risk you have to take. I know it's a very different ramble than usual, but hopefully it was helpful. If you guys appreciate it, please let me know. And otherwise, hope you guys all have a great night, great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.